My name's Stephen Henry, most recently been head teacher of a secondary school until this summer 2018. But been working in schools for 25 years, starting out obviously trainee in MMU back in the day in Didsbury, worked my way up through 5 different schools, the position of head teacher, so I've taken on roles at different levels throughout that 25-year period. I think if someone's looking for work experience in a school, I think they need to approach it as if they're looking for a full-time employment, essentially. If I was receiving an email or some sort of communication from a student, I think I'd want their basic details. But more than that, I'd want to know where they've been in their educational journey and also what their future aspirations are, and something beyond the basics, so that what's their particular area of interest, and more about them and their motivation. Why do they want to possibly go into education or teaching? What's their driver? Because as head teachers, you get literally hundreds of emails every day, or text messages, letters. You want to cut through, a lot of the junk mail to get to those students who are really seriously looking for a career. If they can articulate why they particularly want to go into education, I think that's the key, and probably put that at the top of their communication. I'd be more convinced by somebody who can demonstrate up to that point what they've done about it, whether they've had previous experience, rather than somebody who's, somebody put in their communication that they weren't sure whether they want to go into education or not. I'll probably push it to the bottom of the pile. So if you're not actually sure, I think you should make out that you're determined that that's your future career. It ties into approaching it as if you're an employee, so that I'd be more impressed with somebody that arrives early, that stays later than the school hours, and that somebody's offering themselves to help, not just coming in to observe lessons and take from the school, but to actually give something back. So whether that's helping at lunchtime, at break, before, after school, with a club, an activity, just simply being an extra pair of hands for the staff, that's certainly a big tick for me. And if during that period of experience they make a good impression, then I was always somebody that was looking to keep a mental note of that person, that when they finish the PGC, and if there's an opportunity, that may be a good place to actually, for them to start their journey. As with people applying for posts, I think someone that shows they've done their own research on the school certainly helps. If you're nervous about going to schools for the first time since you've been there yourself, then I think it's, for your first experience, it's not necessarily a bad thing to go back to the school, the secondary or the primary school that you went to yourself, or if you know somebody that works in a school, that can open the door for you. Certainly in my experience, that those people that know somebody that's worked at my school have had, to some extent, a preferential treatment, because there's a bit more security around who they are and what the motivation is. But I wouldn't ever suggest that that's the only experience you get. But a bit like going for a job, if you've got previous experience on your CV and you're approaching a second and a third school, then I think that gives you a bit more credibility. Probably many schools these days are wary of email communication because it's faceless. You don't know anything about that person. For me, seeing somebody come into school and meeting them face to face would be much more powerful. It may be harder to get the initial appointment, but I'd be more convinced that someone's committed if they're prepared to do a bit of research, to travel to the school, to make contact, to give up some time to actually meet the school. I always would then be prepared to give them a tour. There's something still to be said for somebody who's bothered to walk into the school, to actually make contact, to make a first impression, whether it be, my receptionists have always been very perceptive of people's traits and characters, and they can be your first good reference, in a sense, to say, this nice young man, this nice young woman came into school and actually handed on their CV and said, could you possibly contact them? So I think absolutely walk into the school, hand over your details, and then maybe ask for a follow-up appointment after that.